How's it going, everybody? And welcome back to another edition of the Stupid Questions podcast. Today on the podcast, going to be talking with Jason Schiers. He is the founder of the company ENVE Composites. If you have heard of them, I'm sure you have if you are anything in the endurance bikes world, from triathlon to mountain biking to gravel riding. They are all over the world, unplastered across the tour riders, professional bikes, and things of that sort. So Jason's an awesome guy. For the first 35 to 40 minutes, we talk just deep personal life, leadership, philosophy, and other things like that. And then we dive into the entrepreneurship side of things. Definitely going to have him on again because he has an amazing story and obviously a wealth of knowledge and experience. So really look forward to having him on again in the future. But don't want to take up too much time. Just want to introduce this awesome guy, Jason Schiers. I'm doing good. Just got off another work meeting. It was a good meeting this morning. Got some good work done. But yeah, I'm looking forward to getting outside here in a little bit later to go for a ride.
How's the weather been up there?
Oh, dude, it's been great. So I don't know if I told you or not on our phone call, but I'm from, excuse me, grew up in the East Coast, Chattanooga, Tennessee for the last 12 years or so. Wow. And so when it starts to get hot out there, it's like super humid, just like sauna. But being out here, it's really dry heat in Northern California, and I've been loving it. A nice change of pace. My skin's getting used to it, but yeah, getting used to it. Yeah, man. Where are you at?
I'm in Southern California.
Okay, nice.
So yeah, we've had a lot of gray. Today's the first sunny day in a while. It's nice. Sun.
Yeah.
Get out and have some fun too. We've had rain the last few days, so the trails should be super mint.
Yeah, that's awesome. Are you from Southern California?
No, I'm from all over. It's the easy answer.
That's awesome. Where are you like from? Man, I'm sorry. I'm like
I was originally born in Idaho, but I've kind of moved all over. I've lived all over the country.
Yeah,
spent some time on the East Coast.
That's awesome.
A lot of time all over the West. I've moved around a lot.
Yeah, that's beautiful. You think you could ever live in the East?
Oh yeah, I enjoyed it back there. It's all right.
Yeah.
It's just, I mean, it's what you get out of an area, what you're looking for, right? So if you're looking for good stuff, you'll find good stuff. If you're looking for bad stuff, you'll find bad stuff.
Yeah.
It's really kind of up to you what you make of it. So
yeah, 100%. Well, cool, man. Well, first off, just want to say thank you so much for the opportunity to get to connect with you over the podcast format, taking some time out of your busy schedule. Really appreciate it.
Sure, no problem. It's nice to chat.
Yeah.
What do you want to chat about?
Oh, man. So anything and everything. So I guess I'll give you just a little bit of a background about who I am so you know where these questions are coming from. But to keep it super brief, obviously love endurance sport. Have been involved in the entrepreneurship world since I found out what the term actually meant when I was 21. So I'm going to ask some questions hopefully about your different business ventures. Cycling, like I said, endurance sports, obviously awesome. But for me, I really love going deep. So my questions when they start are probably going to be pretty introspective. So take as much time as you want to answer them. But yeah, there's nothing I like more as I've grown up, just gotten a little bit older and more mature. It's the one-on-one connection and conversations with people, I think, that bring the most fulfillment and purpose in my own life and opportunity to reflect and hopefully learn from the wisdom of others. So that's kind of where these questions are going to be coming from. If anything's uncomfortable, you can tell me. I still might ask it.
I don't get very uncomfortable. So
oh, beautiful.
We'll be fine.
Yeah, we'll be awesome then. Well, sweet, dude. Yeah. So the first question I would love to ask is, from your perspective, who is Jason?
Mess, I guess. I would
okay.
I would summarize as a mess. No, I think I'm just a very ambitious person that I define myself in doing things that people say can't be done.
I read you've been saying that for a while. I read an article where you said that back in like 2011 even.
Yeah, so I like the challenge. I like the challenge of doing things that people say shouldn't be doable. So, and it gets me into some pretty deep water pretty routinely. But I try not to bite off anything that I don't see a path to success. So if I can, imagine a path to success or see a creative solution to get to the successful, ending, I'll bite off some pretty crazy puzzles. So they don't always work out.
Yeah, sure. No, that's how the world goes. So for you, in this mentality of breaking the mold and doing what can't be done or people say can't be done, is this something that is a form of nature for you, or is it nurtured from a young age?
Well, I had a pretty tough childhood, and I've been on my own since I was 15. And so I think the pairing of that, it created two outcomes for me that I've used professionally, and those two outcomes are I literally survived on creating opportunity. Like I can say, like it was literal survival to create opportunities as far as
Mm,
how I was going to make an income and how I was going to get through school. And so I had to use a lot of creativity and capitalize on every opportunity that came my way. But then in addition to that, I also just was really angry and little anarchist skate rat. And like, I like to burn down the system when I can, when the system doesn't make sense. So I've always been pretty anti-authority and anti-system. And so whenever I see either authority be abused or the system not make sense, I take a lot of joy in breaking it.
mm. Jason the anarchist. So let me ask you this question then. Has there ever been a scenario where when you first approached a situation, you had that mentality and then you were able to kind of go through the process, get your education in whatever the industry or thing is, and then realize, oh, maybe the system wasn't as broken as I thought it was?
Oh, life is full of humility.
Yeah.
And you'll find it regularly.
Yeah.
So, yeah, no, I think, I think the big thing or the big thing that I would say to that question is, um, I think in those situations or scenarios where you attack something, perspectives that you gain through each of those situations create the wisdom you have to navigate the future of your future state. So, I think when I was young, I saw a lot of things that were broken. As I've gotten older, I've gained a lot of perspective and understand why some of those things are broken. It doesn't mean they're not broken. It just means the way you fix them maybe not as simple as my young one-dimensional mind thought. So, but no, I generally, when I've assigned myself to an opportunity, I've thought through it long enough that I've gained an understanding that it is broken and that there is an opportunity to do it better.
Mm. So you said you had a hard upbringing. What made it hard?
I kind of, well, without going into too much of the doom and gloom part of it, I grew up in a really abusive household,
Mm.
and I got kicked out when I was 15. And
Wow.
later in life, I reconnected with my father, and he explained to me that was supposed to be a threat, but I took it as an opportunity, and I never looked back. So I've been on my own since I was 15,
Wow.
and that came with its own set of challenges, obviously.
Mm. Yeah.
So
So just to share where these questions are going to come from a little bit. So when I was 16, I lost my father to suicide. So it was definitely a different situation, but I didn't leave home, although part of me feels like it did because like when stuff happens, you just
for
you
what it's worth, my
change.
dad ended up committing suicide as well, so we have that in common.
Oh, holy junk, man. So were you able to? Well, I guess I'll tell you this story first before I ask this
Please,
question,
yeah,
just super short. But
yeah.
when I lost my dad, so the first that morning, I was 16. We were going off to school. Got into like a screaming match with my mom right before school, and my dad worked third shift, so he just came home from working. And literally my last memory of him was him looking to me in my eyes and being disappointed, as he should have been. I was not treating my mother with any type of respect that she did deserve, but was really looking for like that man to man, back me up dad situation. He did not give it to me, and as he shouldn't have. But usually I would tell him goodbye in the morning, give him a hug and kiss, go off to school. Well, came back, obviously never got that opportunity again. So that
That's
created
heavy.
its own set of challenges, yeah. But have come to terms with it years later. But for you, did you get to a place where you were able to, at least on your end, reconcile and find peace in?
Yeah, I mean, I think I mean, one of the lessons I've learned in life is that there's two outcomes to every situation. Like, and there is no exception. And you're either gaining wisdom or you're becoming a victim.
Mm,
And you can break everything that happens down to you in your life to those two things. So either you're growing or you're suffering from it. That's it. And for me, I feel like when I finally adopted that belief system, then I could look back on all the hard things with my dad and look at the areas of growth that I've
mm,
gained from even the negative situations. Like
yeah.
even the worst of the worst situations still gave me tools and opportunities to have a, a perspective or an understanding where I could either employ that to help someone in the same situation, or even just to look at the strength that it forced me to gain, even though it came from a very negative place.
Yeah. That's super valuable. Thanks for sharing that. Yeah, I find it's very hard to connect with people who, and I'm not saying this as a way to take down other people or cut them at the knees and say like, oh, well, they're not who they should, they're not who they should be. But it's interesting to me, like people who go through severe levels of, especially around the family household trauma, they are forced to kind of what you're saying, either take the victim mentality or like, oh, well, I need to find strength in this. Do you think it's possible for people to not go through very difficult things to come out the other side of adulthood and be, for lack of a better term, like tempered and strong in their respective life? Yeah.
Absolutely. Yeah. But I think, I mean, if I was trying to help somebody navigate that space that was struggling with that space, I would introduce them to the philosophy of like, you can keep spending all your time trying to find yourself or find your peace only to get more lost, or you can lose yourself giving yourself away to service and to helping others, and you will find all the peace that you're missing. So it's like the fastest way to find yourself or find your peace is to give yourself away. And I think, unfortunately, most people get into that loop of feeling damaged, hurt, or traumatized, and then they just focus on the damage, the hurt, and the trauma, and they just get more lost. And the reality is, there's no good answers in it. You're never going to find a good answer.
Yeah,
when the people you count on disappear and you disappear on you when you're young, or damage you when you're young, there is no good answer. But the best thing you can do is come to peace with it. And the best way to get to that peace is to lose yourself in service and helping other people that are suffering from the same thing. And it's the beauty of it. It's the beauty of it. When you've gone through that traumatic situation, you can sit in front of somebody else that is also suffering and say, I understand. And that's an invaluable thing that the most helpful person from a great background could never say to somebody that's hurting. So there's beauty in everything, even the ugliest of moments.
What was it, or when was it that you adopted that mentality of like, well, I need to find peace with myself?
That was a very hard thing to find for me. I spent the first half of my life just angry at everyone, angry at the world, angry at the injustice of it all. Like, I was just angry. Like, and I used that anger to fuel everything I did. So professionally, I was a terror. Like, I could work harder than anyone. I could tackle the most difficult things, whatever. And I just use that anger as fuel, but it's a very corrosive fuel. And eventually it just starts to burn all the relationships around you. And if you're going to be honest with yourself, you start to see yourself as the common denominator to all those problems.
So one of my favorite movies, I think there's a couple of them. I think it's just called Steve Jobs. Have you seen that movie?
Which one is that? Who's the actor in it?
Yeah, the one with Michael Fassbender, I think is his name.
I don't know. I don't think I'd say that one. I might have to watch that one.
You should check it out. It's my favorite movie of all time. I could watch it over and over again. And it's not because I think to certain people it could only mean a certain thing. So for me, obviously coming from, estranged father-son relationship, there's a lot of successful men. And when I say success, I mean monetary success. A lot of these men have some kind of disconnect with their father. And there's different reasons, I think, for why people are motivated by that. For me, it was always like I was for a long time trying to seek the approval of other men who I deemed worthy to seek approval from. So that would drive me to an insane level of wanting to work very hard. But in this particular movie, there's this coined term which the assistant to Steve Jobs, like she coins it as Steve derangement or reality distortion field. And it's this idea of, he picks up a magazine that he thought he should have been like the person on the front of. And in his mind, that was actually the reality of the truth. Like that was going to happen, but they changed it last minute. And it really spoke to me because there was one point in my upbringing when there was a man who I was really trying to more, even subconsciously, impress and he was the CEO of this company. And I had it, and I believed this with a deep fervor that he was going to ask me at the age of like 22 to be the CEO of this company as he was looking to step down soon. And for whatever reason, after watching that movie and some things happened, I gained the courage to call him on the phone and be like, here's what I believe. Is this true? And I was like shaking, and like it was almost like a confession of a really bad thing that I'd done. I was afraid to ask him, but he was just straight up like, no, that's not what I was thinking at all. And that woke me up to this, like, oh my goodness, like I have those being able to build a false reality around you and have a false sense of belief in something can drive you to do amazing things in terms of accomplishments. But then I realized, like, wow, how many people live in this false
A lot.
reality world that we
A lot.
create to get there? Yeah. So you've had
That's
that.
always been presented to me as stories, and people build those stories to support their belief system in whatever
Mm,
it is, in how they view somebody in their personal relationships, how they view themselves and
mm,
their relationship with the world. But yeah, those stories are dangerous. Um, I agree with you. They can fuel a lot, but they generally, when people get caught up in living in stories, they generally get fueled by weakness at some point,
mm,
whether it be greed or fear or jealousy or whatever. The ugly parts of your personality usually take control of the story.
mm. There are lots of little seeds, I think, that, at least in my case, led to the point where I was able to let go of a little bit of the anger and start to soften at the core. What were some of those seeds that were planted, or the things that happened to bring you to a place of realizing anger is probably not what actually is going on? There's a little sadness underneath or more.
Yeah, I mean, for me, I don't know that there was ever a point. I think it was a long, and I mean, I don't get me wrong. I think I'm still doing work every day. I work on myself all the time.
Sure.
I'm constantly looking at new perspectives and ways that I can be different. But for me, it was just a really long, honest road, like being honest with myself. If I had to pick one thing out, it's being honest, like being honest with yourself and not making excuses and not using rationalization to deal with the pain or deal with the disappointment.
Mm.
Um, like I think the biggest betrayer to us as human beings is rationalization. People can rationalize anything,
Yeah.
and it just betrays you being your true self. The minute you start using it, your weaknesses start to lead you away from your real compass, if you will. And
Mm.
I spend a lot of time when talking to people I care about or people close to me about compass, like about truly understanding your compass.
Mm.
And sometimes your compass is pointing you in places that your ego doesn't want you to go. And then you end up in inner turmoil and have challenges along those lines. But I think one of the most beautiful things you can do as a human being is take enough time to understand what your compass really is. Like, what is your true north?
Mm.
And then having the strength and the courage to follow it. And sometimes it's not in alignment with your ego or not in
Mm.
alignment with what you fantasized for yourself. And but I can say with confidence that when people are in alignment with that compass, they find peace and joy.
Mm.
And peace and joy to me is everlasting. Happiness and accomplishment is fleeting. And so I try to dissimulate the difference between happiness and joy.
Mm. Yeah, I think most people actually really struggle to define the difference between those two, because it's easy to find happiness. It's usually short term, but joy can be something that you can. There's this wonderful book by Corey Ten Boom. I don't know if you've heard of it. It's called A Hiding Place.
I
It's a,
haven't. I'll have to look that up.
yeah, it's about this woman who lived through World War II in the Holocaust. Anyway, long story short, I won't give away too much because you're going to read it, but her and her sister were in a concentration camp together. Her sister's dying beside her, and they're like these lying down on these flea infested beds. And her sister is finding joy as she's dying, being eaten by fleas. And like Corey is sitting there next to her sister, like questioning how is she finding this in this moment. And that's how I think the distinction between happiness and joy is when you have that hope in something or belief in something, and that joy, you can tap into that no matter where you find yourself, which is a very difficult thing to catalyze and to bring in, to galvanize, that you never lose that.
Yeah, it's not earned easily, and it only comes through honesty.
Yeah.
And that I think we live in a society where there's so many external pressures and so many external expectations that I don't think a lot of people spend time being honest with themselves. I think they're either obligating themselves to be what they're supposed to be, or they're, ambitiously chasing what they want to be.
Mm.
And both of those things are not going to take you to happiness. And you hear it from every rich person that says money never bought me happiness or got me happy, and every famous person that says, I got all the fame I ever wanted and I was lonely.
Mm.
It's the reality is if you're chasing what you think you should do, or if you're chasing what you want to do, you probably are not chasing your compass.
Mm. What is your compass?
For me, I center a lot of my compass around service, around people, and I think probably place the highest value on like emotional intelligence. Like
Mm.
my ability to evolve my understanding of my existence, and how I plug into things in the areas that I can feel are genuinely true and exist without emotion and theory. Like, I think are the areas where I feel like I'm most in alignment with my cause.
Mm. Has that cause changed the past 10
Nope.
years?
Nope. And I've changed my course over the past 10 years. I've changed
Sure.
my course many times over my life, trying to sometimes chase my ambition,
Yeah.
But what I always find is, if I can return back to the original compass, I become very peaceful, calm, and joyful.
Mm.
If I'm chasing my ambitions and I get super, super successful, but I've sacrificed those things that brought me true joy, I get really lonely, and I get really ornery. So it's
Mm-hmm.
like, to me, I just think finding that space where, and under testing the model and experience between things that bring you happiness, and fun, versus the things that bring you peace and joy. And peace and joy isn't always super sexy,
Mm.
you know? It's not always super sexy, but it is incredibly fulfilling.
Mm.
So, and the fun and happiness is pretty sexy and usually not very fulfilling.
Yeah. For sure.
So you just got to be honest with yourself about it. Like,
Yeah.
and there is no one answer, and every person's going to have a different equation.
Mm-hmm.
But so the only person that can really answer if they're following their compass is them.
Mm.
But there is that communication within yourself if you're willing to have it.
Yeah.
Your soul will tell you the score.
Yeah.
Your body will come back and tell you what's right and wrong.
It's interesting you say your body. It's amazing how the body is able to remember things when the mind does not, or point out those things. I'm always fascinated with this concept, just being able to lie to ourselves and believe it as truth. You say the same lie enough, and then it becomes canon truth in our
At least it
world.
becomes a story, right? At least it
Yeah.
becomes a story you believe.
Yeah. Yeah. It's interesting. So, one of the reasons I married my wife is because she was one of a very few people that could look at me when I was just in a very different frame of life. I think it's because she has more emotional intelligence. Well, obviously more than I do, but more than of anyone I've ever met. So she was able to look at me and, like, when I felt completely lost inside, forgot who I was, and kind of remind me a little bit more of who I am, and, speak those positive truths back into my life to get me back on the compass or on the straight and narrow. Do you have anyone in your life who is that for you?
Yeah, I've been blessed through my life to have good people come in and out of my life. I think when I was younger, one of the hardest things is letting those people go when they go.
Mm.
It's very difficult because you grow super attached to somebody that can see you,
You.
maybe see you for who you didn't even see yourself. That's a real gift when somebody can come in and actually see the better version of you and kind of help you accomplish that.
Mm.
I think for me, I've got a few of those people that'll be in my life for my whole life. Like, I was lucky enough to have them. I've got some friendships that go back to my teens, and then I've had other people come in and be super impactful and then go out.
Mm.
And for me, like, you're writing a book. That's life's a book, and you're going to have chapters, and some of the characters only exist for a chapter,
Mm.
and some of the others stay in the book front to back. So,
Mm.
and I think the best thing you can do is let a chapter be a chapter and embrace those relationships when they happen, and then when they move on, don't get hung up on them, because
Yeah.
it keeps you from being present in the next chapter.
Mm.
So,
Mm. Very. Would you consider yourself a stoic person?
I'm like I said, I'm a mess.
Yeah. Do you ever think you'll not be a mess?
No, I don't. I think that's part of who I just choose to be. Like
Yeah.
most of my friends and people that know me think of me as just a party guy and a good time person. And I do think life should be good. I think it should be full of good times and have fun. But internally, if I'm following my compass, I have to continue to grow, evolve, and understand.
Mm-hmm. What makes a person valuable to you then?
Mm. Integrity and authenticity.
Mm-hmm.
I really don't care what they are or who they are or what they believe in, but if they operate with integrity and they're authentically themselves, there's somebody I want to know.
Yeah, for sure. Do you have siblings?
I do have five.
Oh, five. Wow. Where are
Farm
you at in the
family.
lineup? Yeah.
I'm number three.
Okay, so you're right in the
I'm
middle.
classic middle child.
Yeah. So you got to learn from the mistakes of the older and
Yeah, it was, yeah. My two older siblings are quite a bit older, and then my younger siblings are right behind me. So it was kind of like two families in one, a little
hmm
bit, but yeah.
So I have two younger sisters. I'm the oldest. Um, and like you were talking about chapters, we have gone through chapters of life where just mostly because of different levels of maturity. I'm 33. I have one she's 26 or 7 now. I don't even know how old she is. I think she's 28. And then the other one, she's just turning 21. So there's that gap there. Me and my 27, 28-year-old sister, it took a while for us to kind of come to a place because we used to fight like you would not believe. We were I mean, guerrilla warfare to the max behind mom and dad's back, try to get at each other. My sister scratching her arm and be like, look what Bob did to me, that kind of stuff. We are super close now. My youngest sister, she's 21. We're getting there. She's starting to mature a little bit more, take um, responsibility for her actions in that way. And we're starting to have a little bit more common ground of just things to connect on. For you and your siblings, I imagine that there are these different chapters you've gone through. How has
Yeah,
that been?
my family's a complicated equation. Obviously, we came up in a very dysfunctional home, and so there's a lot of dysfunction that's attached to us as adults. And I think some of us have worked a little harder at removing that dysfunction than others. Religion was part of our upbringing, and most of my siblings are still very, very devout to that religion. And that religion kind of the culture around it was such that they weren't to question, and they were just to be obedient. And me being the anarchist,
Didn't go so well.
I mean, from me coming out of the womb, I was questioning. And so um I'm close to a couple of my siblings because they have an open mind.
Mm,
The ones that are incredibly closed-minded and religious, like I'm not even on the radar. So,
mm,
and I'm okay with that. I don't, again, I don't want to surround myself with people that don't operate in integrity and authenticity. And
mm,
so if you're going to do something for the sake of obedience, but not use your brain and not use your individuality, I don't think that even, going even outside of my own belief system, I don't think that's what God wants for anyone. If you believe
mm,
in God and he's our father, I think he wants you to grow and develop and mature and
mm-hmm,
gain perspective and knowledge and wisdom. And so if you believe in that Christianity like story, then you were sent here to have a body and to have an experience. And there's only one way to describe the color orange, which is to see it. There's only
mm,
one way to describe salt, and that's to taste it.
mm,
And I think if you go through life and you're not tasting salt or seeing colors because you've been told to keep your head down and just be obedient, I feel like you're wasting the gift that
mm,
and my relationship with my siblings is that
yeah,
they are more concerned about head down than tasting salt.
mm. Very eloquently put. It's interesting to me with what you're bringing up, the rigidity, because I used to be that. So I grew up also in a somewhat of a religious household. My parents were first generation converts into Christianity. So, dad growing up as a drug dealer, doing lots of craziness. My mom being Southern Baptist, but not really practicing. Dad came into the faith and was like to my mom, "Hey, you got to convert or I can't marry you." And so that was her experience. And then she grew into it. But what's interesting is I got to see a very stark contrast between we would have seasons of we are very devout, other seasons of there's a keg of beer and stuff in the fridge, and dad's growing his hair down to his back, and he's back in a band and a rock drummer. So it's just interesting. I got to see a lot of colors of this journey, in which I would say, like, coming full circle with where I am now, I think that that is a beauty of the relationship that one can have with, I would say, God, because even in my own marriage with my wife, we have gone through, after 8 years of being married, these ups and downs and cycles of being a little miniature versions of different people. And I think there's a beauty in that, because no relationship should be so completely stagnant, because there's no growth. If you're not living, you're
Well,
dying. Yeah, it's
it's
totally
impossible.
impossible.
People will change with every decision they make, and you make thousands of decisions every day.
Yeah. But it's fascinating to me how that, it's specifically on the topic of religion and rigidity, there's a comfort and a worship of the precepts and laws rather than the lawgiver, I guess is what you could say. Like, there's a lot of comfort for people who don't have, um, I don't know, security, like security. Well, I'm doing these things, so I am this.
Mm-hmm.
And that can be taken across sport. That can be taken across anything.
Yeah.
Like, become a religion to you.
As with anything, it's and I don't want to over like I picked this word kind of gingerly, but it's radicalized thinking in the sense that it's you're removing common sense and you're removing like just a calm, quiet perspective, and you're radicalizing your beliefs to do a specific set of tasks because you've been told that you're going to gain a reward or that's what's expected of you.
Yeah.
And I just don't think that our human development happens when we adopt that kind of radicalized thinking. And you see it play out to all extents, you know, throughout the world and all cultures when people continue to radicalize their thinking and continue to just keep not using that calm, quiet perspective and keep adopting bigger and better beliefs. And generally those beliefs are fueled by either fear or greed, you know, whether it's, I'm going to get to heaven if I do all of this. So it's reward thinking, or it's, you know, like if my belief system isn't real or true, then everything I stand for is a lie. And then they get fearful and they become judgmental. And so for me, it's just like, I think those organized religions are structures in which we stop thinking for ourselves. And I don't think that's what our creator intended. He wanted us to think, grow, and develop. And when you get into those structures allow people to stop thinking for themselves and just start doing the hive thinking, if you will.
Yeah, that group think. Do you believe in God? In a God?
I do believe in a creator. I have no question in my mind that there's a creator.
So who is God to you?
I think he's a lot simpler than everybody wants it to be. And I think I would refer to God as source. And I think all things are derived from source. And I think if we could stop trying to label him and stop trying to pick tribes to belong to, we could start to understand it. But as long as we attach God to tribes and attach God to exclusivities, I think we rob ourselves of our ability to actually know him.
It's interesting you say exclusivities, because I'm again fascinated with this concept, that because I do believe in a creator God. I went through, the things why I believe what I believe. However, it is so fascinating to me that, the average human lifespan for at least the past several thousand years is like, what, 80 to 80 years old? Yeah. And so what can we learn in the face of eternity over 80 years? Like, there's not much. I barely can figure out what kind of food I should eat for my best, operating self, let alone, what is the creator of a universe. But I'm always fascinated also with this concept of, because we've talked about emotional intelligence and integrity and authenticity. I'm amazed by this concept of being able to speak, because as I've gotten older, I think something that isn't given enough credibility or thought into these days is the concepts around just the power of our words, from to a very metaphysical level. Because we go back, several hundred years, and we have people talking about witchcraft and, conjuring, and basically the use of words and speech to bring up whatever it is that we want to bring up. So if we do believe as a Christian or in a creator God that God spoke the world into existence, he gave us that breath in our own lungs, and we also have the ability to speak, Like, I don't think people realize the to the metaphysical, chemical, physical, biological level what those words can do to another person on the receiving end, even to ourselves. It's just like it's completely mind-blowing to me. I wish that there was a way to give that to people, but like you said, it's like the color orange. You can only experience it by seeing it.
I mean, but it's there. And you know, if you're Christian, you have beliefs in Jesus, but if you go back and you study Jesus, like really study him, not what his apostles wrote thereafter, but if you study him, he was actually anti-religion, and he spoke of very simple truths.
Yeah.
Of not being judgmental, of using your mind, of being calm, of being peaceful, of being joyful. That's what he was trying to get us to see. And in doing that, you start to get to know God. Like that's what he taught. And he didn't teach you go to church on Sunday and don't like this religion because they're doing it different than you did. And I think the apostles put all of that into Christianity because they were having a hard time convincing people around them how amazing Jesus was because they didn't see Jesus firsthand.
They didn't see the color orange.
So they created these bigger stories and more elaborate schemes and things to make it more heavy and more impactful because we're human beings at the end of the day. And when you tell a story, if people aren't listening, what do? You make the story more interesting.
Yeah.
And that's human nature. So, but then you have other religions where you had another person come down and they did the same thing. They taught self-centering thought, peace of mind. And that's how you get to know source. So I think it's there in front of us. But I think us as human beings have this attraction that goes full circle back to our ambitions and our egos. Like we have this attraction for things being bigger, bigger, bigger. And we eventually make it bigger, bigger, bigger. And that's why I think we've lost that voice or that breath or that speak because we're not keeping it.
Yeah. Speaking of simple, like you talked about on a number of occasions now, I think it would be such a benefit to all society. And I think this is why newer developed societies or cultures are a little bit more in touch with, regardless of the religion, just in touch with like that kindness, that love precept. Being able to garden. I don't know if you've ever gotten into like actual gardening, but working with.
I was raised in Idaho.
Yeah. So
I spent plenty of time pulling weeds.
Yeah, you pull weeds, you plant things, you see the fragility of certain species of plant over another. There's so much to be learned about the human condition when you work in the dirt. And physically, it grounds you, right? So there's some science behind that stuff. But it's so interesting, like looking at how plants grow, you can learn so much just about the human cycle of life, just how we work even mentally. It's so mind-blowing.
Nature.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, you can learn all you really need to know by looking at the patterns in nature and the patterns in our bodies. Our bodies are a very unique thing. And as somebody that creates products, like to think about the creation of the human body and the miracle it is, like the fact it regenerates and all the things it does, and it's self-contained and it's like it runs on minimum fuel, and like it's an incredible machine.
Yeah.
And I think if you can step back and look at the patterns in you, like in your body and how your body operates, muscles get stronger when you use them. When you don't use them, they gain atrophy. You become sick and ill if you don't exercise and take care of yourself. Like that's the same stuff that applies to life. Same stuff that applies to a business. Like if you're exercising it and you're using it, it's going to get stronger. And you look at that same pattern in nature. When things are taken care of and they're, say for a plant, if it's planted in the right soil with the right amount of moisture, it's going to flourish. You stick it in the wrong place, it's going to die. I mean, we are also beings of nature, and we're living in nature's law. And I sometimes think we get so caught up in technology and in advancement and innovation and all of this stuff, it just pulls us farther and farther away, and we're becoming less happy as people. Like it's showing, in the data now. It's not a theory anymore. It's in the data that people are getting genuinely more unhappy.
Yeah.
And it's every time we add a complexity to life that makes our lives a little easier, we use the muscle less.
Atrophy.
And I think we're suffering from mental atrophy as a society now.
That's so interesting. Yeah, 100% true. I could talk on this philosophical stuff forever. So but for the sake of like getting to your story a little bit more,
you're gonna have to edit some of that out.
no, heck no, 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 no. This is the greatest conversations I have are the ones that start out like this. So because now we have a foundation for people understanding a little bit of who you are and why you believe what you believe and what you do. But walk me through a little bit of your entrepreneurial journey. I would love to hear first, just when did you become aware that, oh, like I'm entrepreneurial?
I'll move really quick. It's a long story, but I'll move really quick and just give you like the 411, like a quick Reader's Digest synopsis. So, like I said, I was on my own at 15, and the place I got a job was a car wash. And so, I was able to finagle my way through school before computers, really. So, like, you could have to take forms home and then forge your mom's signature. You know, of course, I had this single mom that was always at work and never available through high school. So I was always taking paperwork to and from home, and then I would just forge signatures. And so I was able to finagle my way through high school until my senior year. And I had one teacher that just wouldn't work with me, and so kept sending me to the counselor's office. The counselor, I finally confessed to the counselor, but I was terrified to tell anyone because I thought for sure they would like call the state or something, and I would get
Rip you out.
pulled out of the reality I had created for myself, which was actually a lot of fun. So anyway, I was working at this car wash, and they decided they had several locations, and they wanted an additional cash revenue system or center. And they brought in a consultant, and the consultant decided to do detail pays. And that consultant took me and my buddy, because we were hardworking, and gave us the opportunity to be part of the setup of their detail base. So he literally took the time, and by today's standards, this could never happen, but he would literally buy us beer. And mind you, I'm
17.
16, 17. He would buy us beer and pizza at his apartment in, like in downtown. And we would go to his apartment, and he would coach us up on what we needed to do to start this business. And then he would give us books to read. And it was all kinds of books. It was business books to like The Little Prince or The Reluctant Messiah. Like it was all, he would just literally groomed us as two individuals. And I can't thank the guy enough. Like I didn't realize at the time what I was learning, but he basically taught us how to set up a business. He taught us how to do the costing. He taught us how to do the billing. Like he walked us through all of it. And so over the course of the next year and a half, I set up detail bays and ran detail bays successfully, not realizing what I was learning. Then after I got out of high school, I had the opportunity to move to California. I'd grown up skateboarding and snowboarding. I'd snowboarded through high school when it became a thing, and wanted to go learn how to surf. So I moved to California to learn to surf. Sitting and waiting for surf sets or wave sets to come in or whatever. We'd hang out and just chat, me and my buddies, and we worked at a surf shop. And back then it was when like Billabong and Quicksilver and like Stussy and all those guys were just starting to come out with like big print t-shirts. And we were like, man, we could do this, no problem. And so we started a little company called Full On Surfwear and sold t-shirts and beach pants. And it was like when we were sitting out there talking about it, I was like, well, I know how to set up a business because I just done these detail based ignorance of youth. And so we actually went for it, and we set up a business and started doing that. Unfortunately, some family stuff happened, and I, at that point in my life, left California and went back to deal with my family stuff. And that's when I first reconnected with my dad. After 6 years of just being fully separated from family. So went back and met with my dad and dealt with some of that stuff, and then got a simple job at a window company. I was just doing window manufacturing, but because of my ambition at that point and because of my past history, I was always coming up with, why don't we try this? Why don't we try that? I went to a trade show, and in the back corner, there was a guy selling vinyl extrusions for vinyl windows. And now every window, and most every window that goes into a new home is either wood or vinyl. But back when I was doing it, everything was aluminum, and it was really not thermally efficient. And I saw the vinyl, and so I ran and grabbed my boss at the time and just said, hey, like, you got to come look at this. I think this is legit. I think this is a big deal.
Sure.
And he loved the idea, so he talked to his partner. His partner wasn't into it, so he came back to me and said, hey, I'm thinking of branching off and going and start my own window company. You want to come with me? So that ended up being business 3 that I got involved in. And at that point I was 21, 22, and ended up starting a vinyl window company with this guy. And it was my first foray into like real manufacturing. And so I ran the factory, and it taught me a lot about manufacturing. So at this point now, I've had the experience of learning how to start a business. I've had the experience of developing a brand centric product, which surf and skate is very brand centric. And now I've had the opportunity to work in a manufacturing role. And each of these kind of parlayed into me becoming who I am today. Like, and I look back on it, and at the time it was just chaos and noise, but it was actually a really beautiful prepping for me to work my way into a leadership role where I know every aspect of the business. So I left the window company, took a job at a machine shop working for my brother. Ended up owning that machine shop. That machine shop moved to Vegas. That's how I ended up owning it. Is the guy moved it to Vegas, ran out of money, and I ended up having to buy it so people could remain employed. Um, I took it over. We started cutting tools for a carbon fiber company. I've always been really into riding bikes, and I've always been into automotive stuff and automotive racing. And that's when carbon fiber was just starting to show up on Formula One cars and whatnot. So it was super like ooh material, like exciting material. So the idea of learning anything about carbon was super exciting. And I ended up selling that machine shop to the composite company that I was cutting the tools for, and became the VP of the composite company. And then we went from there into doing a bunch of really unique carbon fiber products. And then eventually sold that business. And I went with the business as like a technical expert to teach people how to manufacture stuff the way we were manufacturing it. Filled my 2-year commitment and had a falling out with those guys. I wasn't a very good employee. I've always kind of been my own boss. So I'm not a very good
been there.
employee. And at the end of my 2 years, I left and went and started Edge Composites, which became ENVE, which is what you probably know from your tri background. And yeah, the nice thing about the Edge ENVE experience is it's the first time in my professional career where I wasn't inhibited by anything. I didn't have a boss or a partner or a senior, like an older partner that was telling me what I can and can't do. And it was the first time I was able to take how I feel like something should be branded, how I think something should be made, and create a culture and a workforce around it, and kind of create a company culture that supported it. And it was a validation to all of my beliefs, if that makes sense, because it went
quite
and it
well.
went well. And so now I've just been sharpening, you know, the blade, if you will, on becoming better at the culture part of it, and creating a more positive culture to get a positive outcome. And, you know, and obviously I still am very much in love with innovation and creating new products and testing what can and can't be done. But that's essentially my synopsis of how I got to where I am.
Yeah, very beautiful. So with just coming up to modern day, or I guess not quite modern day, but when you started ENVE, you get into that world, like you said, there were these three aspects that you really honed in on: how you think it should be built culturally, the product, and branding. What is it about the quality aspect of actually making the product that was most difficult in coming to a place of, this is my ideation of expectation of quality, and then arriving at that? Were you ever 100% happy with the quality that you achieved?
Well, here's the irony of business. The worst people, and I can say this with confidence, the worst people for the future state of a business is the financial people. Financial people want gains now, and they will cut corners now to
To
get
get
the
it.
gains they want now. It's how they think. It's how they've been trained. They live in 12-month increments. Like, that's how they think and feel. The problem with that is if you think that way, you don't build something that has stability to last over time. And you make compromises in the product, and you make compromises in the culture, and you make compromises in the branding. And if you
Short
do
term.
that, then you start to erode your long-term runway. Unfortunately, in our business, the two areas of people that always get the advancements in the business are financial people or salespeople. And both of those people live in 12-month increments.
Mm-hmm.
They live on 12-month goals. So building long-term stability is very difficult with that training or that mindset. So for me at ENVE, it was the first time I could put my foot down and say, no, we're not going to compromise on the product. We're not going to compromise on how we brand. And I know that this isn't what you guys see everyone else doing. And I know that because those guys love to look at things through ROIs, and ROIs always have to be validated by an external model, right? So you can't validate an ROI on your feelings or your vision. You have to go out and find an example of how it's worked in the past and why you're doing it. So I had read an article, I think it was a Harvard review, business review, about, actually, I take that back. It's the opposite. It was an intercompany document from Google about Harvard MBA is the number one way to kill an innovation company.
I love it.
Because they do so much based on historical business model.
Mm-hmm.
And the reality is, if you're building a future-based company or an innovative-based company off of a historical model, then you're not building an innovation-based company.
Yeah.
So, for me, I think that the quickest path to success is this: you make a great product, and you tell a great story, and then you back it up with great customer service. If you do those three things, then the financial thing takes care of itself, and the sales thing takes care of itself. So you put the demons in their box and they can do their job, but they're not going to hurt the long-term growth of the company. If you make a questionable product, or you don't market it in a successful way, and you don't back it up with good customer service, you're going to start to struggle. And then when you start to struggle, the natural recourse of struggle is always going to be empower the financial guy or empower the sales guy.
Yeah.
And then you're falling into that 12-month cycle, which is very, very dangerous.
Mm. So then bringing it up to modern day, like you've started this company a number of years ago, GT, BMX and bikes. So what?
GT, I didn't start. GT started in 1972. And I was brought in. So GT was the biggest deal in bike in the 70s, 80s, 90s.
Okay.
Like early 90s. And the best riders in the world raced GT. Like the best riders in the world rode GT. And they were a Goliath. And then one of the founders died in a motorcycle accident. And he was the horsepower. GT stands for Gary Turner, who's still around. And Gary did all the welding and bike design, but he had a partner named Richard Long that drove the business. He understood the unique business model. He's the one that made it irreverent and exciting and took it global and done an amazing job with it, but he unfortunately died in a motorcycle accident. And when he died, it was like they pulled the motor out of the car and the car stopped moving. And so then it got sold several times. And at the beginning of 2003, I guess, or maybe it was
2022, May.
2022. It was sold to Pawn, and they brought me on in May to turn the brand around. And at that point, the brand was being sold in big box stores, Dick's Sporting Goods, and had lost all of its
brand value. Yeah.
So we had spent the last 3 years now getting rid of a lot of COVID inventory with not very good spec on it, and then designing new bikes and whatnot to relaunch the brand as kind of a back where it should have been, back as an IBD brand selling high quality products. Unfortunately, Pond made the decision to shut GT down. So we're now in the process of a shutdown. So everything me and my team did for the last couple of years is not going to get a chance to see the light of day, which is a little bit of a bummer. But it's tough. It's tough times in the bike industry right now. It's tough for everybody.
Do you have rights to start a new company with these designs? Is that a possibility?
Well, the designs that we created belong to Pond. Like they belong to the organization, and I'm not sure what they're going to do with those. We've been in the process of like turning everything over back to the greater group, and they'll do what they're going to do with the brand. I did spend some time last year with another ex-Pawn employee trying. We made an attempt to try to buy the brand and tried to see it through, but it ended up being
in vain.
Yeah, I just ended. I think I think for the group I work for, they hold, that I don't know for a fact this is the case, but I do believe they're the largest bike conglomerate in the world now, and they've decided that they want to hold on to the brand for the brand value of it, and so that there'll be some future play with GT of some kind. I don't know what that looks like, but they're going to
Mm-hmm.
keep the brand in house, and they're just going to try to navigate the pressures of the current moment with all the tariffs and all the
Yeah.
COVID hangover and whatnot. The bike industry has taken a beating for the last 5 years, and the tariffs aren't going to help. So
Mm.
they're just trying to navigate it from their perspective, and like kind of my phrase for the last 5 years is like everybody that I talk to within this industry is like, we're dealing with stuff nobody's ever dealt with before, so nobody has the answers.
Yeah.
It's like it's going to really boil down to who's got the inspiration on how to navigate these unique times, because they are
Yeah.
totally unique.
Mm.
So
Where does that leave you with your future?
I'll be looking for my next chapter.
Yeah.
I'm closing this chapter,
Yeah.
getting ready to write the next one.
Yeah. Well, it seems like you've figured out how to work not necessarily for, but with other people with something that you don't own outright. Do you
Mm.
miss the envy days? Do you have a
Oh yeah.
desire to
Yeah.
get back to
Yeah.
that?
No, it's very difficult for me to work in an organization where I can't move at the speed or the agility that I like to move. And I'll be honest with you, I think business is becoming it's getting to a place where it almost mandates that level of agility, or you are going to get left behind.
Mm.
Like our society is moving faster and faster and faster all the time, and if you're going to have a successful business, you have to operate with the level of speed in
Yeah.
how you respond to every change that comes your way, because there's always going to be one of your competitors is going to move that quickly,
Mm-hmm.
and that gives them an advantage. And business is highly competitive,
Yeah.
so it's like you got to think of it as a competitor and not as a conservator.
Yeah. So you're landing this plane right now. How long is your runway to when you decide to take off again to the next
Oh, I
thing?
don't sit still for very long.
Yeah. So you're
I
like
don't
a
sit
bush
still for
plane.
very
You're
long.
gonna touch down and you're gone.
Mm.
So you already have
Yeah,
things
no,
in the works.
yeah, I just, I try to operate in integrity all the time. So I haven't put much time into what I'm doing next. To be honest, I don't feel like I can have those conversations in integrity with anyone,
Mm-hmm.
because I have work to do here to clean it up still, and I want to clean it up the best way I can. So we had a lot of partners that kind of bought into this story. We're going to turn it around, and so I need to make sure all those partners get taken care of properly.
Mm,
The
fair.
company I work for is willing to do the right thing and take care of people properly, so there's no reason for me not to stick around and make sure that that gets done. And once all of that is done and done correctly, um, then I'll look at what's next. But
Mm,
I don't want to. I find you do your best work if you're focused, and
mm,
I'm not done focusing on the current job.
yeah. You don't seem like the type that would ever want to retire.
I had some quiet times after MB. I had about a year
Yeah.
after MB, and there was legal proceedings that I was caught up in, and there were non-competes, and there were all kinds of nonsense I was dealing with. It gave me a view of what retirement would look like, and I loved it for about 90 days.
Yeah. And then you're like,
And then
I'm
after
ready to
that, I
retire.
got really bored.
Mm,
And what I would suggest to you is, like, if you're doing business correctly, if you're working in a business field correctly, in a place that you truly want to be, it becomes your social circle. It becomes the way
becomes
you
you.
navigate life.
Mm-hmm.
It becomes part of who you are. And, and if you're in a place you really enjoy, that's pretty irreplaceable. And I can't, I am a people person, and I love having my people, and I love having my tribe I run around with. And I, I don't see how I would be really happy without having kind of that thing
Mm,
that I'm always focused on, or trying to improve, or trying to make better,
yeah.
Um, I take a lot of joy and purpose out of it.
Yeah.
So, and I know that's not for everybody, but for me, like the ability to continue invent or to make things better is what gets me out of bed every day.
Working is living, not living is working. If I had a child, let's just say son or daughter, they become really successful, they go through, make something great of themselves. I'm just inherently very proud of the parenting that I did and then what they were able to become once I, stood them up and they could walk and then run. It would be very hard for me to sell that child. Was it difficult for you to sell ENVE?
Yeah, I didn't sell ENVE. I got pushed out by financial partners. It was
Wow.
soul crushing. You had mentioned the the Steve Jobs movie. The Ashton Kutcher one I did see, and there is the scene where
screaming,
the person shakes his hand and at the awards banquet or whatever and says, we just really want you to know we got your back and we're behind you all the way. And then like a month later, they're exiting him out of his own business and he's screaming and punching the roof of his car. My story exactly. ENVE was my baby. It was very difficult to grow because it was a manufacturer and a product-based company. And in the bike industry, that's rare. It's very rare that somebody does their own manufacturing. So with the explosive growth, it was very, very expensive because it wasn't just placing more purchase orders and increasing our inventory. It was, we had to buy equipment. We had to train people. We had to do second shifts. Like it was extremely challenging. And I bled for that company for years. And then, in a very inopportune time, I was taken advantage of by my partners, and I was going through a divorce with my wife, my mother, and my children, and I was not focused on. I was focused on that and not my business, and I was taken advantage of pretty harshly, and then pushed out of my own dream. And so it took me years. It took me years to even be able to not to think about things just 100% on where I was presently and not have just sheer rage over what was taken from me. So it was a very brutal process.
Do you think that you would ever, I guess it probably seems like too big now to like get back to that place where they're calling you up to come rescue it, but
oh, they've sold it now. They've sold it, and it's been sold again. And so the people that did me dirty are, I mean, it's aside from a few of the management team, like most of the people that did me dirty are gone. And they made their money. They made a lot of money off of it.
Yeah.
I did not.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's something I'll never be okay with. But it's one of those things where it's like I can grow from it, or I can be victimized by it, and I'm choosing growth, but I'll never be okay with those people. My kids had to eat top ramen for months as I fought for, pennies on dollars that I had earned.
Yeah.
So yeah, I'll never be okay with those people. They're not great people.
Yeah. Sheesh, man. I don't even know what to say. I mean, that's like super difficult. I can't imagine being in that situation. Like I've had plenty of failed businesses and minor successes, but to be shoved out of something to be forced, having to give my child forced adoption, like that seems like a very difficult thing to swallow.
It was not fun. It was fun at all. It was a tough life experience, but I've had a few.
Yeah.
They are what they are.
Yeah. How old are you?
I'm 53.
53. So you've got another lifetime to live. I look forward to seeing what the next businesses are that you crank out, and hopefully some books. I mean, I don't say this lightly, like you're very articulate with the way that you think and believe and operate. So I'm wondering if you keep track of these things, that you ever have any intention to publish them or.
Yeah, I've been told that a lot. I guess I don't value my opinion enough to put it on paper.
That's probably fine. Well, how about this? We'll record one episode per day for the next 2 months, and we'll turn every transcript into a chapter.
There you go. Yeah.
Yeah.
No. But no, it's I'm really I feel really grateful that I've had the life I've had. Yeah. It's come with its fair share of stripes on my back, but like it's also been, I've had a very exciting life. I've done crazy stuff. I've traveled the world. I've met amazing people. I feel very blessed.
Yeah, for sure. Well, I do want to have you on again in the future, just to hear some.
Yeah, we didn't get much into the business side, but apparently the conversation went where it was supposed to go. So
yeah, no, it was great. Yeah, I appreciate it. If I had more time, I definitely would want to sit down a little bit further. So I definitely want to schedule a future time to talk about some more of the things, because my first ever introduction to business, like real business, was manufacturing. Although it was in China and it was with textile products, I fell in love with that side of the world, geographically, but also with just the long-term mindset of making things and working with people to work across language barriers to manufacture a product.
Yeah, we should talk about it. I'd be open to it. Let me know.
I'll send you some dates then. Sweet.
Yeah, I'm about ready to have some time too, so now's a good time for me to talk.
Yeah, beautiful. Sweet. Well, I'll send you some dates then. But Jason, man, thank you so much for taking the time and sharing so freely and openly just about your personal life for the first 40 minutes or so. That's it's very
I got nothing to hide.
Yeah, beautiful. Thank you.
All right. Cheers. Well, thanks for your time, Seth. Take care.
Yep. Thank you so much to Jason for coming on and sharing from such a personal and deep level there at the beginning. Really appreciate the different philosophies that he operates his life around with integrity and truth. So again, thank you so much to Jason for coming on. Looking forward to having you on again. If you made it to this point in the podcast, just want to say thank you so much. Really appreciate you guys being here. Check out the show notes and description for any stuff that you might want to check out that has been mentioned in the podcast. And also, if you are on Facebook, I don't know why I said Facebook, definitely meant YouTube. Make sure to like, comment, subscribe, turn on the notification bell. If you are listening on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, if you could review, like, comment as well, that continues to help grow the podcast. And as always, check out the show notes for the newsletter. Thank you guys so much for being here. Really appreciate you. We'll connect with you in the next one. Thank you so much. See ya.